I like to be positive. And for once, I think it's time to be positive about movies that have come out in 2023. This is my best films of 2023. Now, this is my own personal list. I'm sure all of you have your own list that will look completely different from mine. In fact, there are quite a few movies that I have not gotten around to seeing, and I don't know exactly when I'll be able to see those or get to those. So I thought, well, let's just do what we can now. Let's just go off of what I have seen from this past year. I have 7 movies ready to talk about, so let's jump right in. Starting the list off at number 7, Barbie. Barbie is a movie that will probably be controversial, the fact that I even have it on here, because like most films that make over $1 billion in theaters, what happens? People turn on it. There are a vocal group of people that saw this movie, or probably didn't even see this movie, and they hate it. They shit on it. Mostly the male point of view. Not all males, of course, because look at me, I have it on the list. But there are some males that I don't quite understand the reason for let's hate a movie that has a female protagonist that is trying to be positive about the female point of view. Especially, I love that the Barbie character did this, where it was self-reflective of this doll and what the expectations of this doll brought on to the female point of view, something that I never thought of or never stopped to wonder about. Margot Robbie, I think, does a stellar job as this character. I mean, how could she not? She's beautiful, she's gorgeous, and she's talented as hell. But Ryan Gosling was one of my favorite parts of this film. Speaking of males, I mean, yes, he's goofy and he's over the top, but he's the funniest parts of the movie. And yeah, maybe Will Ferrell was a little too over the top, and I'm not saying everything about this movie worked, but I had way more fun with this film than I ever expected going into it. So it gets extra points, especially because you can't not mention that originally this was supposed to be with Amy Schumer. Holy fuck, how bad would that have been? Number 6, Creed 3. So I noticed that not everybody enjoyed this quite as much as I did, and maybe that has something to do with Sylvester Stallone as Rocky not being in this movie. And I understand that. I mean, his absence was definitely felt. It was noticeable. But I think for Michael B. Jordan, for this being his first directed film, and for him playing this character for the first time standing on his own, I thought he did a great job. I think he's more than capable of carrying this franchise going forward if he has to do so. I liked where his character was at this point in his career, being more of a family man, a father, and just dealing with what that level of fame and what being at the top for this long does to a character like this. I think Tessa Thompson does not get enough love for how great she is as his wife in these films. And the villain, Jonathan Majors, once again showing how great of an actor he is. I know people have their opinions, and I get it as far as his personal actions and things that he's done, and I understand that, but this was an example of how much range and just the layers of a villain that he is able to portray while being menacing but also being sympathetic all at the same time. Number 5, I had to include at least one horror movie on this list. Totally Killer. This was my favorite horror movie of the year, and I talked about this in my best horror movies list, where Totally Killer just took me by surprise, given the fact that it was a time travel movie, so I got major Back to the Future vibes from this, and in a good way. They knew how to have fun with the comedy. They knew how to take advantage of this premise and do a lot with it. I love the idea of our main character getting to interact with her mom younger, and just that high school dynamic and just her trying to befriend her while her mom wasn't the most likable person in the world. And then you have the slasher aspect to it, which is my favorite horror genre, sort of the Scream motif. This is the same director that did Happy Death Day and Freaky, films that I think has a good tone when it comes to fun horror movies that I'd love to see more of. Number 4, Oppenheimer. This was great for me, being a huge Chris Nolan fan, and I was sort of at this point with Nolan movies where I thought, are we getting to the point with Nolan's career that maybe his newer films won't quite be as good as his earlier work? Is he going to be one of those directors that his name is mostly banking on movies from quite a few years ago? After Tenet, especially, I kind of thought, okay, maybe this guy doesn't quite have it anymore. But Oppenheimer showed that if you take a more simple story, a true story, that's a guy who, the real person that created the nuclear bomb. I loved how they dealt with his struggle and his guilt on creating such a weapon that will be the cause of killing so many people. I think Cillian Murphy did a tremendous job being finally the lead in a Nolan movie. I also liked his relationship with his wife, Emily Blunt, who you could say didn't get enough to do, but I thought being such a great actress, she definitely made her scenes count. Also, his side girlfriend that he had, Florence Pugh, I got to see a lot out of her. And other actors like Robert Downey Jr., just such a different side to him. So many actors, Matt Damon, a lot of people in this film, I think were able to do a lot of things that Nolan can bring out of his actors. Number 3, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I am so happy to be able to put a superhero movie and a Marvel movie especially in my top best of the year, because you see the comments, you see the talk of how many people are saying that superhero movies are sort of done now. They're played out. They're washed. Let's move on. And I'm not saying I don't completely understand that sentiment, but when you see a good one still be made today, when you see that the genre does still have life, does still have a lot of places that they can go, and I think a lot of that has to do with the director, James Gunn. He's always been able to be creative with his films, to still make you care about over-the-top, ridiculous characters that on paper we shouldn't care about, right? A raccoon, a talking tree, all of the dumb characters that are very silly and over the top, but he makes it work. Number 2, John Wick Chapter 4. And this is so high on my list because I loved that first John Wick movie. And a big part of that is, well, one, the movie itself is just damn good, no doubt. But also, I was so surprised. I didn't really know much about the film. I didn't see a trailer. I went to a screening and was blown away, right? And I think it brought back Keanu Reeves to a place in his career where he was bankable again. And the sequels have been good. They've been solid. 2 and 3, I had fun with, but they never quite hit that emotional level that, for me, the first movie had. And then Chapter 4 happened, and I think Chapter 4, if not matched it, was damn close as far as delivering on not just the action. These movies are known for hitting the highs with the action and just going completely all out. But man, I loved everything about this movie. I was engaged all the way through, and I thought the story, too, was solid all the way around, from as far as the villains, from as far as John Wick having this bounty on his head and having all these other assassins go after him. Very similar plot to the other films, don't get me wrong, but for whatever reason, it just felt like more care and a little more effort was being put into this particular one. Another one of these movies that was 3+ hours, and I did not feel it. I did not mind the length. But for my number 1 favorite movie of 2023, it's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I know it's a superhero movie. I know it's yet another Marvel movie, but I could not help but put this at the top of the list. Everything that I talked about in the previous superhero list that I did with Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, as far as this animation style taking my breath away, just how creative they're able to be with it, how gorgeous this movie looks at certain points, and how you can pause the movie and just have it look like a painting or have it look like something that I would love to be framed on my wall at any point. And I think these filmmakers have done a great job with this cast, with the various different Spider-Verse characters. If you would have told me that some of the better Spider-Man movies don't even have Peter Parker as the main character, he's a side character, and it's Miles Morales, I never would have believed it, especially from Sony. Granted, these aren't the same people making those other Sony superhero movies. Believe me, this is its own group entirely, and you can tell the attention to detail. I think they've done a great job. I can't wait to see the third film in this trilogy, to see what else they do next. So guys, let me know in the comments below, not only what do you think of my best movies of 2023, but what are your lists? What are some of your favorites from this past year? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later.